The eviction notice lands on the kitchen table with a sound like a gunshot. Gerald Thornton does not hand it to her. He drops it. He drops it the way someone drops trash into a bin, careless and final. And he looks at her with an expression that makes clear he has already decided everything about who she is and what she deserves. "You have 30 days, he says. His voice carries the particular authority of a man who has never been questioned, never been denied, never been made to justify himself to anyone. 30 days to vacate the premises. Keisha Monroe stands on the other side of her own kitchen table, and she does not reach for the paper. She does not look at it. She looks at Gerald Thornton, at his pressed khakis and his polo shirt with the country club logo, at his gold watch and his manicured hands, and his face that has never known hunger, never known fear, never known what it means to count pennies at the end of the month and pray they add up to enough. She says, "I paid my rent, every month, on time." Gerald Thornton sighs. He sighs the way people sigh when they are being forced to explain something obvious to someone they consider beneath them. He says, "This is not about rent, Mrs. Monroe." Keisha does not correct him. She has not been Mrs. Anything in 3 years, not since Marcus died, not since the drunk driver crossed the center line and took everything from her in the space of a heartbeat. But she does not tell Gerald Thornton this. She does not owe him her grief. She says, "Then what is it about?" Gerald Thornton looks around her apartment. He looks at the second-hand furniture, the Goodwill curtains, the drawings her son Isaiah has taped to the refrigerator. He looks at the nursing textbooks stacked on the counter, the scrubs hanging over the bathroom door, the evidence of a life being lived carefully, deliberately, within means that are barely enough. He says, "I am repositioning this property, upgrading the tenant profile. This building is in an up-and-coming neighborhood, Mrs. Monroe, and I need tenants who reflect that trajectory." Keisha feels the words land. She feels them the way she felt the doctor's words 3 years ago. The ones that began with, "I am so sorry," and ended with everything she loved being gone. She says, "You are evicting me because you think I am too poor." Gerald Thornton's mouth twitches. It is almost a smile. He says, "I am evicting you because this building deserves better." Behind Keisha, a door opens. Her son Isaiah appears, 9 years old, still in his school uniform, his backpack hanging from one shoulder. He looks at his mother. He looks at the man standing in their kitchen. He says, "Mama, who is that?" Gerald Thornton looks at Isaiah. He looks at him the way he looked at the apartment, the way he looked at the second-hand furniture and the Goodwill curtains. He looks at this child like he is calculating something, like he is adding up numbers in his head and finding the total wanting. He says, to Keisha, not to Isaiah, 30 days, Mrs. Monroe. I suggest you start packing." Gerald Thornton leaves. The door closes behind him. The apartment is silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic and the ragged edge of Keisha's breathing as she fights to keep control. Isaiah has not moved from the doorway. He is watching his mother with eyes that are too old for his face, eyes that have seen too much loss, too much struggle, eyes that understand more than any 9-year-old should. "Mama," he says. His voice is small. "Are we losing our home?" Keisha turns to him. She crosses the kitchen in 3 steps, and she kneels before him, and she takes his face in her hands, her palms against his cheeks, her eyes locked on his. She says, "We are not losing anything." She says, "We are going to be okay." She says, "I promise you, baby. I promise you, we are going to be okay." Isaiah nods. He trusts her. He has no choice but to trust her, because she is all he has, the only constant in a world that has taken everything else. He does not know that his mother has $47 in her checking account. He does not know that she is 2 months away from completing her nurse practitioner certification. 2 months away from a salary that would change everything. 2 months away from stability. He does not know that 30 days is not enough time, that the security deposits for new apartments require money she does not have, that the rental market in this city has become a war zone where people like her are always the casualties. He does not know any of this because Keisha has spent 9 years protecting him from the sharp edges of the world, building walls between him and the things that could hurt him, carrying burdens that would break a lesser person. She stands. She smooths his uniform. She says, "Go do your homework. I am going to make dinner." He goes. She watches him disappear into his room, watches the door close behind him, watches the last light of the afternoon slant through the windows and turn everything gold. Then she picks up the eviction notice. She reads it. She reads the legal language, the 30-day timeline, the signature at the bottom. Gerald Thornton, it says. Thornton Properties, LLC. She thinks about the 17 months she has lived in this apartment, the first place that felt like home since Marcus died, the walls she painted herself, the curtains she sewed from fabric remnants, the life she has built piece by piece from the wreckage of everything she lost. She thinks about Isaiah's drawings on the refrigerator, the ones he made last week, the ones that show their apartment with a sun overhead and flowers in the windows, and the word home written in careful block letters above. She folds the eviction notice. She puts it in her pocket. She walks to the stove, and she begins to make dinner, and her hands do not shake, and her face remains still. And she does not cry because she cannot afford to cry, because crying is a luxury for people who have someone else to carry the weight. Keisha Monroe was born in Detroit in 1989, in a hospital that would close its doors 3 years later, in a neighborhood that would become a symbol of everything America abandoned. Her mother, Lorraine, worked 2 jobs and went to church every Sunday and raised 3 children alone after Keisha's father left when she was 4. Lorraine Monroe believed in education the way some people believe in God. She believed that knowledge was the only thing no one could take from you, that a degree was a key that could open doors that would otherwise stay locked forever. She worked nights at a nursing home, or wiping bodies and changing sheets and holding hands in the darkness. And she came home at dawn and made breakfast for her children and sent them to school with lunches packed in brown paper bags. She said, "You are going to be something." She said, "You are going to rise so high they will have to look up to see you." Keisha listened. Keisha studied. Keisha graduated valedictorian of her high school class and earned a full scholarship to the University of Michigan, and she walked across that graduation stage with her mother in the audience, weeping, her hands clasped together like she was praying, which maybe she was. Keisha became a nurse. She worked in the pediatric ICU of Children's Hospital of Michigan, and she held the hands of parents whose children were dying. And she learned that medicine was not just about bodies, but about souls, and about the spaces between people, about the things that cannot be measured or quantified, but matter more than anything. She met Marcus in the hospital cafeteria. He was a resident, pediatric cardiology, with hands that could fix broken hearts and a smile that could light up a room. They married on a Saturday in October, with leaves falling like confetti and Lorraine Monroe crying in the front row. Isaiah was born 2 years later, perfect and healthy and screaming, and Keisha held him in her arms and made a promise. She promised that he would never know hunger. She promised that he would never know fear. She promised that he would grow up believing the world was kind, because she would make it kind for him. Then the drunk driver crossed the center line. Then the phone call came. Then Marcus was gone. And Keisha was a widow at 31, with a 6-year-old son, and a world that had shattered into pieces she did not know how to put back together. She left Detroit. She could not stay, could not drive past the hospital where Marcus had worked, could not see his ghost in every corner. She moved to Charlotte, where her sister lived, where no one knew her story, where she could start over. She found an apartment in a building owned by Thornton Properties, LLC. She enrolled in a nurse practitioner program, specializing in pediatric cardiac care, because that was what Marcus had loved, because carrying on his work felt like keeping him alive. She worked night shifts at the hospital while studying during the day. She slept 4 hours a night. She survived on coffee and determination, and the memory of her mother's voice saying, "You are going to rise so high, they will have to look up to see you." The days after the eviction notice blur together like watercolors in the rain. Keisha works her shifts. She studies for her certification exams. She searches for apartments in a market where the average rent has increased 43% in 2 years, where landlords require first month, last month, and security deposit, where the math does not work, no matter how many times she runs the numbers. She finds an apartment in a building on the east side. It is smaller than their current place, older, with radiators that clang and windows that do not quite close. But it is affordable. It is available. It is the only option she has. She signs the lease. She borrows the deposit from her sister, who has 3 children of her own, and a husband who just lost his job, who does not have money to spare, but gives it anyway, because that is what family does. Because Lorraine Monroe raised her daughters to lift each other up, even when lifting meant going without. The moving day arrives. It is a Saturday in March, gray and cold, with a wind that cuts through jackets and promises more winter to come. Keisha has rented a U-Haul truck. She has packed everything they own into boxes labeled in black marker. She has prepared Isaiah as best she can, explaining that they are going on an adventure, that their new apartment is going to be wonderful, that change is not always bad. Isaiah does not believe her. She can see it in his eyes, the fear, the uncertainty, the way he clutches his backpack, like it is the only solid thing in a world that keeps shifting beneath his feet. But he does not argue. He does not cry. He helps her carry boxes to the truck, his small arms straining under weights that are too heavy for him, his face set in an expression of determination that breaks her heart. Gerald Thornton arrives at 10:17 a.m. He parks his Mercedes in the loading zone. He walks toward them with his clipboard and his polo shirt, and his expression of profound inconvenience. He says, "Mrs. Monroe, I need to inspect the unit before you leave." Keisha sets down the box she is carrying. She says, "The apartment is clean. I painted the walls back to their original color. There is no damage." Gerald Thornton smiles. It is not a kind smile. He says, "I will be the judge of that." He walks past her into the building. He does not hold the door. Keisha watches him go, and she thinks about all the things she could say, all the words burning in her throat. She thinks about dignity. She thinks about her mother. She thinks about Isaiah, who is watching, who is learning, who is building his understanding of the world from moments like this one. She says nothing. She picks up the box. She carries it to the truck. She keeps moving because that is what she has always done, what she will always do. She keeps moving because stopping is not an option, because there is no one to catch her if she falls, because her son is watching, and he needs to see that they cannot be broken. Gerald Thornton emerges from the building 23 minutes later. He walks to his Mercedes. He rolls down the window. He says, "Everything appears to be in order. Your security deposit will be returned within 30 days, minus any deductions for wear and tear." He pauses. He looks at Isaiah, standing beside the truck, holding a box that contains everything he owns from his bedroom. He says, "Good luck, Mrs. Monroe. I hope you find somewhere more suited to your circumstances." He drives away. The Mercedes disappears around the corner. The exhaust fumes hang in the air for a moment, then dissipate, and it is as if he was never there at all. Keisha turns to her son. She says, "Let us finish loading. We have a new home to get to." The new apartment smells like mildew and broken promises. The radiators clang all night, filling the darkness with sounds that wake Isaiah from sleep, that make him cry out for his mother, that add another layer of exhaustion to days that are already crushing. But there is a park across the street. There is a library 2 blocks away. There is a school that Isaiah can walk to, and a school where the teachers know his name and ask about his mother and tell him he is smart, he is capable, he can be anything he wants to be. Keisha finishes her nurse practitioner certification in April. She passes the exam on her first attempt, scoring in the 97th percentile, and her clinical supervisor at the hospital pulls her aside and says, "I have never seen anyone work as hard as you. There is a position opening up in pediatric cardiology, a nurse practitioner role, specialized, prestigious. Do you want me to put in a word?" Keisha says yes. She does not hesitate. This is what she has been working toward for 3 years, what has kept her going through the night shifts, and the exhaustion and the grief that still wakes her sometimes, gasping, reaching for a body that is not there. The interview is in May. The Keisha wears her best suit, the one she bought at a consignment store, and altered herself. And she walks into the conference room, and she faces a panel of doctors who have spent their careers saving children's lives. She tells them about her experience. She tells them about her training. She tells them about her husband, Marcus, who was a pediatric cardiologist, who died before he could finish his work, whose legacy she carries with her every day. The panel listens. They ask questions. They take notes. At the end of the interview, the chief of pediatric cardiology, a woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, who has performed over 3,000 surgeries and trained doctors from around the world, leans forward in her chair. She says, "Keisha, can I call you Keisha?" She does not wait for an answer. She says, "I have reviewed your clinical evaluations. I have spoken with your supervisors. I have looked at your exam scores, your patient outcomes, your everything." She pauses. She smiles. She says, "When can you start?" Keisha starts the following Monday. She is assigned to the cardiac care unit, working with children who have congenital heart defects. Children whose lives depend on the precision of surgeons and the vigilance of nurses. Children who are fighting battles no child should have to fight. She is good at her job. She is better than good. She has a gift for connecting with families, for explaining complex medical situations in ways that make sense, for holding hands in the darkness the way her mother once held hands in that nursing home in Detroit. She earns respect. She earns trust. She earns a reputation as the person you want by your side when everything goes wrong. 3 months pass. The mildew smell fades. The radiators keep clanging, but Isaiah learns to sleep through them. The park across the street becomes a regular destination, a place where Keisha pushes her son on swings and watches the sunset behind the Charlotte skyline, and allows herself sometimes to believe that the worst is behind them. Then the phone rings. It is a Tuesday evening in June. Keisha is making dinner, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, Isaiah's favorite. Her phone buzzes on the counter. She does not recognize the number, But she answers anyway because in her line of work, unknown numbers often mean emergencies, often mean parents who cannot find the right extension, often mean life or death. "Hello," she says. There is a pause on the other end. Then a voice, female, uncertain. "Is this Keisha Monroe?" "Yes," Keisha says. "Who is this?" Another pause. "My name is Rebecca Thornton. I got your number from the hospital. You work in the cardiac unit. I need..." She trails off. She is crying. Keisha can hear the tears in her voice, the way it breaks on certain syllables, the particular quality of grief that she knows so well. "I need your help," Rebecca Thornton says. "Please, my daughter is sick." Keisha's mind is working, processing, connecting. "Thornton," the name echoes. "Rebecca," she says. "Is your father Gerald Thornton?" "Yes," Rebecca says. She sounds confused. "Do you know him?" Keisha closes her eyes. She breathes. She thinks about the eviction notice landing on her kitchen table. She thinks about Isaiah asking if they were losing their home. She thinks about the Mercedes driving away, about the exhaust fumes, about the words suited to your circumstances. She opens her eyes. She says, "I know him. Tell me about your daughter." Rebecca's story comes out in fragments, broken by sobs, jumbled by fear. Her daughter's name is Emma. She is 4 years old. She was diagnosed 3 weeks ago with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, a congenital defect where the left side of the heart is severely underdeveloped. She needs surgery. She needs specialized care. She needs the best, and Rebecca has done her research, and every source says the same thing. The best nurse practitioner in pediatric cardiac care at Charlotte Children's Hospital is Keisha Monroe. Rebecca does not know that Keisha Monroe is the woman her father evicted. She does not know that her daughter's best hope for survival is the same woman who packed boxes in the cold while Gerald Thornton inspected the apartment for damage. She does not know any of this. She only knows that her daughter is dying and she needs help. Keisha listens. She takes notes. She asks questions about Emma's condition, her symptoms, her current care plan. She is professional. She is compassionate. She is exactly what Rebecca Thornton needs in this moment, a lifeline in the darkness, a voice of calm in the chaos. When Rebecca finishes, Keisha says, "Bring her in tomorrow morning. I will be there." Rebecca says, "Thank you. Thank you so much. You do not know what this means." She hangs up. Keisha stands in her kitchen with the phone in her hand and the spaghetti boiling over on the stove. She thinks about forgiveness. She thinks about revenge. She thinks about the child who is fighting for her life and the father who threw Keisha out of her home because he wanted tenants who reflected the right trajectory. "Mama," Isaiah says. He is standing in the doorway, watching her. The spaghetti is making a mess. Keisha turns off the burner. She drains the pasta. She serves dinner and sits across from her son and eats without tasting anything, her mind 3 weeks in the future and 3 months in the past simultaneously. She is thinking about what Marcus would do. She is thinking about what her mother would say. She is thinking about the hospital, about Emma, about the surgery that will determine whether a 4-year-old girl lives or dies. She is thinking about Gerald Thornton, who does not yet know that his granddaughter's fate is in the hands of the woman he judged and discarded. But the next morning arrives gray and humid, the sky pressing down on Charlotte like a weight. Keisha dresses carefully, professionally, in the scrubs that mark her as a member of the cardiac team. She drops Isaiah at summer camp. She drives to the hospital. She walks through the doors that she has walked through 1,000 times, past the gift shop and the cafeteria and the elevator bank, up to the 4th floor, where the cardiac unit hums with the quiet urgency of lives being saved. Rebecca Thornton is waiting in the family consultation room. She is younger than Keisha expected, early 30s, with red hair and pale skin, and eyes that are swollen from crying. Beside her is a man who must be her husband, tall and nervous, his hands clasped in his lap. And in a chair in the corner, looking smaller than he has ever looked, is Gerald Thornton. He does not see Keisha at first. He is looking at the floor, at his expensive shoes, at the carpet that has absorbed the tears of 1,000 parents whose children are fighting for their lives. He is wearing his polo shirt and his khakis, the same uniform he wore the day he dropped the eviction notice on Keisha's table. But something is different. The authority is gone. The certainty is gone. He looks like a man who has been broken open by something he cannot control, something that money cannot fix, something that his position and his properties and his Mercedes cannot protect him from. Keisha walks into the room. She says, "Rebecca, you must be Emma's mother." Rebecca stands. She rushes forward. She takes Keisha's hands in hers and she squeezes them with desperate gratitude. "Thank you for seeing us," she says. "Thank you so much." Keisha smiles. She is about to speak when Gerald Thornton looks up. His eyes find her face, and she watches recognition move through him like a wave, watches his expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something that looks almost like fear. He says, "You." Keisha says, "Hello, Mr. Thornton." The room goes silent. Rebecca looks between them. Her husband shifts in his seat. The weight of the past and the present collides in the sterile air of the consultation room, and everyone can feel it, the tension, the history, the thing that has not yet been named. Gerald Thornton stands. His face is pale. He says, This cannot be right. You work here." Keisha keeps her voice even. She says, "I am the lead nurse practitioner in pediatric cardiac care. I specialize in congenital heart defects. Doctor, Vasquez asked me personally to consult on your granddaughter's case." Gerald Thornton's mouth opens, closes, opens again. He looks at his daughter, at his son-in-law, at the woman standing before him who is everything he assumed she could never be. Rebecca says, "Dad." Her voice is sharp. "What is going on? How do you know each other?" There is a long pause. Keisha waits. She lets the silence stretch. She lets Gerald Thornton stand in the weight of it, the weight of what he did, the weight of who she is, the weight of this impossible coincidence that is not a coincidence at all, but a reckoning. Gerald Thornton says, "She used to be a tenant of mine." Rebecca frowns. "Okay," she says. "So what?" Keisha says, "Your father evicted me 3 months ago. He said I was too poor to live in his building. He said his property deserved better." The silence that follows is absolute. Rebecca stares at her father. Her husband stares at her father. Gerald Thornton stares at the floor, and Keisha can see it, the shame, the recognition, the collapse of everything he thought he knew about the world and his place in it. Gerald Thornton does not apologize, not at first. He stands in the consultation room with his hands hanging at his sides and his face drained of color, and he says nothing because there is nothing he can say, no words that can undo what he did, no explanation that can justify who he was. Rebecca is the one who breaks the silence. She turns to Keisha. She says, "He evicted you?" Keisha nods. "Yes." Rebecca looks at her father. The expression on her face is something Keisha recognizes. The particular devastation of realizing that someone you love is not who you thought they were. She says, "Dad, how could you?" Gerald Thornton shakes his head. He says, "I did not know." Rebecca's voice rises. "You did not know what?" "That she was a nurse, That she was a person? What exactly did you not know? Keisha watches this unfold. She watches the family fracture along lines that were already there. Hairline cracks that have been waiting for the right pressure to split them open. She thinks about Emma. She thinks about the 4-year-old girl lying in a hospital bed somewhere on this floor, hooked up to machines that are keeping her alive while the adults in her life sort out their history. She says, "Stop." Both of them turn to look at her. She says, "This is not about what happened 3 months ago. This is about Emma." Rebecca nods. Tears are streaming down her face. She says, "You are right. You are absolutely right. I am so sorry. I had no idea. If I had known..." Keisha holds up her hand. She says, "If you had known, what would you have done?" The question hangs in the air. It is not accusatory. It is genuine. Keisha wants to know. She wants to understand whether Rebecca would have intervened, would have stood up to her father, would have been the voice in the wilderness that said this is wrong. Rebecca does not answer. She cannot answer because she does not know, and that uncertainty is its own kind of answer. Keisha says, "I am going to do everything in my power to help your daughter. That is my job. That is who I am." She pauses. She looks at Gerald Thornton. She says, "What happened between us does not change what Emma needs. And what Emma needs is the best possible care from people who know what they are doing, who will fight for her life with everything they have." Gerald Thornton nods. He cannot speak. His eyes are wet, and Keisha realizes she has never seen him like this, stripped of his authority, reduced to a father watching his granddaughter fight for survival. He says finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "Thank you." Keisha says, "Do not thank me yet. Thank me when Emma goes home." She turns. She walks out of the room. She has work to do. Emma Thornton is 4 years old, and she looks even younger, tiny in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beep and hum and measure every beat of her struggling heart. She has red hair like her mother, and green eyes that are too bright, and a smile that appears whenever anyone walks into her room. A smile that says she does not understand how sick she is, that she trusts the adults around her to fix whatever is wrong. Keisha sits beside her bed. She holds Emma's hand. She says, "Hi, Emma. I am Keisha. I am going to be helping take care of you." Emma looks at her. She says, "Are you going to make my heart better?" Keisha says, "I am going to try my very best." Emma nods. She says, "My grandpa is scared." She says it matter-of-factly, like she's reporting the weather. She says, "He cries when he thinks I am asleep." Keisha feels something shift in her chest. She thinks about Gerald Thornton, crying at his granddaughter's bedside. She thinks about the man who dropped the eviction notice on her table, who looked at her and saw only what she lacked, who judged her and found her wanting. She thinks about how easy it is to hate someone until you see them broken. She says, "Your grandpa loves you very much." Emma nods again. She says, "I know." She pauses. She says, "Are you scared?" Keisha considers the question. She could lie. She could give the professional answer, the one that projects confidence and calm. But something about this child, something about her directness and her honesty, makes Keisha want to tell the truth. She says, "A little bit. But scared is okay. Scared means you care about what happens." Emma squeezes her hand. She says, "My mama says you are the best. She says you are going to save me." Keisha swallows hard. She says, "I am going to do everything I can, Emma. And there are a lot of really smart doctors and nurses here who are going to help. We are all going to work together to make your heart stronger." Emma smiles. She closes her eyes. She is exhausted. her small body fighting a battle that would crush most adults. And Keisha watches her slip into sleep and thinks about what it means to save a life. She thinks about all the children she has watched over the years, the ones who lived and the ones who did not. She thinks about the weight of it, the responsibility, the way it never gets easier no matter how many times you do it. She thinks about her own son, Isaiah, healthy and whole, playing at summer camp right now with no idea that his mother is sitting beside a child who might not live to see the fall. She stands. She lets go of Emma's hand. She has rounds to make, patients to see, a job to do. But she pauses at the door. She looks back at the little girl in the bed, and she makes a promise. She makes it silently, the way she makes all her promises, the way she has been making promises her entire life. She promises to fight. She promises to try. She promises that whatever happens, Emma will not be alone. The surgery is scheduled for 3 weeks out. Dr. Vasquez wants Emma's condition to stabilize first, wants her to build strength, wants to give her the best possible chance. 3 weeks of waiting, 3 weeks of watching and monitoring and hoping. 3 weeks of Gerald Thornton sitting in the family waiting room, looking smaller every day, looking like a man who is being dismantled piece by something he cannot fight. He tries to talk to Keisha. He corners her in the hallway one evening after visiting hours, when the unit is quiet and the only sound is the beeping of monitors. He says, "Miss Monroe." She stops. She turns. She says, "Mr. Thornton." He clears his throat. He says, "I need to. I want to." He cannot finish the sentence. The words will not come. Keisha waits. She gives him time. She has learned that silence is sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer, that people will fill it with the truth if you let them. He says, finally, "I was wrong." Keisha says nothing. He says, "What I did to you, the things I said, the assumptions I made." He shakes his head. His hands are trembling. He says, "I have been thinking about it ever since I saw you in that room. I have been thinking about who I was, who I have been." He pauses. He looks at her, and his eyes are wet, and his voice breaks when he speaks. He says, "I was so certain. I looked at you and I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew who you were, what you were capable of, what you deserved. And I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything." Keisha lets him finish. She lets him say the words. Then she says, "Mr. Thornton, do you know why I am helping your granddaughter?" He shakes his head. She says, "Because she is a child, because she is sick, because she needs help and I can provide it." She pauses. She says, "I am not doing this for you. I am not doing this because you apologized. I am doing this because it is right. Because every child deserves a chance. Because that is who I am, and it has nothing to do with who you are." Gerald Thornton nods. He says, "I understand." Keisha says, "I am not sure you do." She steps closer. She lowers her voice. She says, "You looked at me, and you saw a poor black single mother. You saw someone who did not belong in your building. You saw someone beneath you, and you never once considered that you might be wrong, that I might be more than what you assumed, that the person you were evicting might one day hold your granddaughter's life in her hands." Gerald Thornton flinches. The words hit him like blows, but he does not look away. He does not make excuses. He says, "You are right." Keisha says, "I know I am right." She pauses. She says, "But being right does not fix anything. Being right does not undo the nights I spent worrying about where my son and I were going to live. Being right does not erase the fear in his eyes when he asked me if we were losing our home." She shakes her head. She says, "Your apology is heard, Mr. Thornton, but it is not for me to forgive you. That is work you have to do yourself." She walks away. She does not look back. The surgery happens on a Wednesday. It lasts 11 hours. Dr. Vasquez leads the team, and Keisha is in the room, monitoring vitals, watching numbers, being the steady presence that holds everything together when things get chaotic. There are complications. There are always complications with cases like this. Emma's blood pressure drops. Her heart struggles to adapt to the repairs. There is a moment, 3 hours in, when everyone in the room holds their breath, when the monitors scream warnings and hands move frantically, and the line between life and death becomes impossibly thin. Keisha does not panic. She has been in rooms like this before. She has watched children slip away despite everything, and she has watched children pull through against all odds. She does her job. She calls out numbers. She adjusts medications. She keeps her voice steady and her hands still. Emma survives. By the end of the surgery, her heart is beating with a rhythm it has never had before, strong and steady and full of possibility. Dr. Vasquez emerges from the operating room with exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She finds Rebecca and her husband in the waiting room. She tells them their daughter is going to be okay. Rebecca collapses. She falls to her knees and she sobs, great heaving sobs that shake her entire body, and her husband kneels beside her and holds her while she cries. Gerald Thornton stands apart. He is crying too, quietly, his shoulders shaking, his hands pressed against his face. He looks up as Keisha walks past. Their eyes meet. He mouths the words, "Thank you." Keisha nods. She keeps walking. She has other patients to check on, other families to comfort, other lives to save. But she allows herself a moment, a single moment, to feel the weight of what just happened. A child who was dying is going to live. A family that was breaking apart is going to heal. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, something that looked like justice, but felt like mercy. That night, Keisha goes home. She hugs Isaiah so hard he complains. She makes dinner, real dinner. Not spaghetti from a jar, but chicken and vegetables and rice. And they eat together at the table in their small apartment, with the clanging radiators and the windows that do not quite close. Isaiah says, "Good day at work, Mama." Keisha smiles. She says, "Yeah, baby, good day at work." Emma recovers. It is slow, the way recovery always is, measured in small victories and minor setbacks, in steps forward and steps back. But she recovers. 3 months after the surgery, she is running again. She is playing again. She is being a 4-year-old, loud and messy and gloriously alive. Keisha receives a letter. It arrives at the hospital, addressed to her care of the cardiac unit, and the return address is a law office she does not recognize. She opens it expecting legal documents, expecting something work-related, expecting the mundane bureaucracy of healthcare. What she finds is a check. It is a check for $50,000. There is a note attached, handwritten on expensive stationery. It says, "Miss Monroe, this cannot undo what I did, but I hope it can help undo some of the damage. I have also established a scholarship fund in your son's name at his school. It will cover his education through high school and college after that if he wants it. I know this does not make us even. I know this does not make me a good person. But I am trying to be better. I am trying to learn. Thank you for teaching me what I should have known all along. Gerald Thornton." Keisha stares at the check. She stares at the note. She thinks about what this money could mean. The apartment she could rent, a real apartment, one without mildew and clanging radiators. The savings she could build. The future she could secure for Isaiah. She thinks about taking it. She thinks about refusing it. She thinks about what her mother would say, what Marcus would say, what the right thing to do even is in a situation like this. She folds the check. She puts it in her pocket. She will decide later. Right now, she has work to do. Months pass. A year passes. Keisha is promoted. She becomes the head of the nurse practitioner team in pediatric cardiology. I'm the first black woman to hold the position in the hospital's history. She gives a speech at the ceremony, and she talks about her mother, about Marcus, about the path that led her here. She does not talk about Gerald Thornton. She does not talk about the eviction. Some stories are not for public consumption. Isaiah grows. He is 11 now, tall for his age, with his father's smile and his mother's determination. He wants to be a doctor. He wants to fix hearts like his dad wanted to. He does not remember much about Marcus, just fragments, just echoes, but he carries his father's legacy in ways he does not even understand. Keisha watches him, and she sees the future. She sees the man he is becoming. She sees the impact he will have on the world. And she knows that everything she endured, every struggle and every setback, was worth it for this, for him. Have you ever been judged before you were known? Have you ever walked into a room and felt the assumptions landing on your skin like dust, settling into every crease and fold, becoming a weight you carry without choosing to? Have you ever been too poor, too dark, too female, too other, for spaces that should have been open to everyone? This is not just Keisha Monroe's story. This is the story of every mother who was looked at and found wanting, every worker who was passed over because of who they appeared to be, every person who carried qualifications that no one bothered to see because they were too busy seeing something else. The Gerald Thorntons of the world are everywhere. They sit in offices and boardrooms and behind desks where decisions are made. They look at resumes and applications and human beings, and they sort them into categories, worthy and unworthy, deserving and not, based on nothing more than the stories they tell themselves about who belongs where. Most of them never learn. Most of them never have a granddaughter named Emma who gets sick, never have their worlds turned upside down, never come face to face with the humanity of the people they dismissed. Most of them go to their graves believing they were right, believing the systems they upheld were just, believing the judgments they made were fair. But some of them learn. Some of them, like Gerald Thornton, are broken open by something they cannot control, something that forces them to see what they refused to see before. And when that happens, when the scales fall from their eyes, and they finally understand, the question is not whether they will apologize. The question is what they will do next. Keisha took the money. She took the scholarship. She took what was offered because it could help her son, because it could build the future she had been fighting for, because refusing it would not have undone anything. But she never forgot. She never pretended that the check erased the eviction, that the scholarship erased the assumption that Gerald Thornton's redemption erased the harm he caused. She carried both things with her, the injury and the amends, and she let them coexist without pretending one cancelled the other. That is the truth about justice. It is never clean. It is never complete. It is always tangled up with mercy and pain, and the complicated reality of human beings trying to do better after they have done wrong. What matters is not perfection. What matters is the trying. What matters is the willingness to see people as they are, not as we assume them to be. What matters is choosing over and over to be better than we were yesterday. Keisha Monroe is still working at Charlotte Children's Hospital. She is still saving lives. She is still teaching other nurses and practitioners what it means to see patients as whole people, not just bodies, not just diagnoses, not just problems to be solved. And somewhere in Charlotte, in an apartment that no longer smells like mildew. A boy named Isaiah is doing his homework and dreaming of the future. He will be a doctor. He will fix hearts. He will make his mother proud and his father's memory shine. And he will know, because his mother taught him, that the world is not always fair. But that does not mean we stop fighting. It means we fight harder. It means we rise higher. It means we become so good that they have to look up to see us. That is the legacy Lorraine Monroe left to her daughter. That is the legacy Marcus left to his son. That is the legacy we can leave to each other, if we choose to, if we are brave enough, if we refuse to stop rising, no matter how many times someone tells us we do not belong. So the next time you look at someone and think you know their story, stop, ask, listen. Let them tell you who they are instead of deciding for yourself. Because the woman you are evicting might save your granddaughter's life, and the lesson you need most might come from the person you dismissed. That is the world we live in. That is the world we have the power to change. One assumption challenged at a time. One story heard at a time. One heart fixed at a time.